What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another episode of Lions Latest, going through the latest Detroit Lions news, man. And today, we got a fun one, man. We got a couple of players to dive into today. The Lions made multiple additions to their practice squad. Not just players that were with the Lions that didn't make the 53 that they signed back. No, but players from other teams that we have not talked about before. So that's what we're going to do in today's video, as well as sprinkle in a little roster news of the 53-man roster. So let's get it started. Welcome, everybody, to our video. Glad you guys are here. And yes, man, we're back with some Lions news, and I'm excited for this video because we're going to talk about multiple new players today. I'm going to do my best to get right to the point, but I do have some clips on each of these players. I still would like to watch more on all of these guys, but I did go back, watch their entire preseason, whichever team that they were on. Some of these guys have played a little bit in the past in the regular season as well, so I didn't go into that. I just took a look at what they did most recently in this year's preseason. Also added a player back to the practice squad, and that is David Blau. David Blau is back on the Lions practice squad. Now, he wasn't with us in this year's preseason. We know last year in the preseason he was with us. Ended up going with Nate Sudfeld. They added Nate Sudfeld to the mix. But now they bring back David Blau to the practice squad. Now, I didn't go back and watch what David Blau did in the preseason this year. Since we've seen him with the Lions for multiple years, we've seen him play in the regular season, I think I'm just going to kind of leave that out, right? I'll announce the news. David Blau's back on the practice squad, but I'm not going to dive into him individually in terms of like what he did in the preseason, because this video will get very long if I do that, especially with a quarterback. And we've already seen him play. So I'm going to focus on the new guys that we have not talked about yet. Hopefully that's fair. So we do need to talk about this 53-man roster move. I wouldn't say this is much of a surprise, but I'm very happy to see that it's done. Craig Reynolds is back on the Lions 53-man roster as the third running back on the Lions roster. Now, we talked about them adding Zonovan Knight to the practice squad as well, but Craig Reynolds is back. He is a great running back 3 because he does bring all assets of the game, right? Pass game impact. He brings pass protection, obviously run game impact. He's not elite in a lot of categories, right? He doesn't really stand out in any specific category outside of contact balance. Really good vision is probably his calling card in my opinion, but he's a very versatile run scheme type of player. He has a huge background as a receiving back. Now, he's not a big time separator in terms of a man coverage beater, so he doesn't get as much of the, versatility as a route runner, but he is a guy that has been very impactful there in the past, and he's been impactful when we've utilized him, even if it's just flat routes and swing routes, and sometimes maybe he'll throw in a screen route. But he's a great running back 3 that looked really good in the preseason in the last 2 games that he did perform after coming back to the Lions. So I was super happy to see this news. It was kind of expected. All right, I was trying to speak it into existence in that 53-man roster live stream when we had found out that we had cut him, that like, look, he's going to be back. And usually you place players on IR that get through the 53. In this case, Julian Okwara goes to IR for the Lions. If you put him on an IR before the 53-man cut, he's just going to be out for the season and he can't come back. So you don't want to do that. If you want him to have a chance to play, you have to bring him through the 53-man roster and then place the guy on IR. And that's what the Lions decided to do. In the meantime, they decided to cut Craig Reynolds. And I don't know this to be true. All right, I'm not trying to like put some information out there because I have zero evidence for this at all. But I kind of get the sense that there was probably some like verbal, like, hey, look, we want you back on this roster. Don't go sign with someone's practice squad, okay? We got a spot for you here. Just trust us. We got to bring Julian through the 53 because we want to see if he could potentially play again this season. So we got to bring him in there. So we're going to cut you, but if you hang tight, we got a spot for you on this 53-man roster. Now, maybe if another team would have offered him a better deal than what he got here, I don't know exactly what his contract details are. I couldn't find them. I don't know if this was old or new, but it's probably somewhere around the league minimum. From what I've read, it sounds like it's somewhere in that category. But either way, maybe someone offers him a better deal. Maybe he accepts that. But I think you kind of get to that point where you're like, look, this is not a practice squad running back, right? Craig Reynolds deserves to be on the roster, in my opinion. He deserves to be on the roster as kind of like your bottom depth chart type of running back, right? Because he can do all those different things, because he's impactful on special teams. He has a spot on an active roster, right? He's not a practice squad guy. So I kind of get the sense that maybe there was like a little bit of Lions saying like, hey, hang tight. Don't sign a deal. We got you, okay? But we have to do this so we can get Julian through because, obviously if we cut Julian, we're not getting this guy back to the practice squad, I wouldn't think. And then on top of that, of course, we want to place him on IR, but we don't want him out for the season. So this is just a process that had to go down. But as much as it was kind of expected and I was trying to speak it into existence, it did happen. So I wanted to say that. Very happy. You feel really good. Now we have 3 backs. Feel really good about that. Also, some other little news in there. So, John Parker Romo, the kicker. Lions added Michael Badgley back to this practice squad. John Parker Romo was not added back by the Lions. Instead, he has signed with the Chicago Bears on their practice squad. And Ryan Swoboda is signing with the New York Jets. Those are kind of the most recent players for the Lions that are going elsewhere that I had read on. But with that being said, let's dive into these new additions, man. I'm excited, bro. We got 4 players to talk about, and I'm ready to get to it. Let's start right there with a player that was actually with the Chicago Bears, speaking of the Chicago Bears, and we're going to go to a receiver, and I hope I'm saying his name right. Okay, Doris Fountain. I think that's how you say his name. I could be saying it wrong. Maybe it's Doris. I don't know. I think it's Doris, though, from everything that I've read, but I could be saying his name wrong, so I'm just going to say Fountain, okay? It's another big, explosive receiver, right? We had the Denzel Mims. It's another big body, explosive, incredible leaper. That's the type of receiver that the Lions added here. At 6'1.5", 206 pounds. I'll go through some of the testing scores, though these are unofficial. The biggest thing that stands out to me is he posted a 42.5-inch vertical. That is incredible. 42.5-inch vertical, along with 34-inch arms at the receiver position. Like, that is a huge part of his game, and you see it when you start to watch him and some of the impressive catches that he makes. The length, the leaping ability, the ball tracking, the physicality at the catch point, all of those things show up when you watch him. Also testing a 4.51 40, which is pretty darn good as well, and a 7.02 3-cone time. Now, diving into his games, like I said, I watched all these players in all their preseason snaps. I did notice it looked like he was kind of injured against the Bills there towards the end of the game. He did stay in, but every route that he ran after that looked kind of like there was something wrong. He kind of started limping, but he stayed on the field. I'm sure it's for the same reason that a guy like Mohamed Ibrahim tried to stay on the field, because look, man, this is my opportunity to show what I'm about. So you do appreciate that toughness factor of it, but it did look like maybe it's not that serious. I took away from watching him because there were some things that I really liked about his game, and there's some specific examples that I'm going to show. I want to talk a little bit about today's partner, but also our partner for this season, BetUS. And I wanted to break it down, give you guys a different way to look at this so I can really just showcase what's going on here. So we're partnering with BetUS, and if you go use that top link in the description, you deposit at least $100, they'll match that 125%. That is the deal that BetUS is giving you for using that top link in the description. You can also just go on Google. I typed it in right here, betus.com/DoseOfDion, and you search that up, it'll take you right to this page. Then of course on this page you guys can see the 125% sign up bonus, and you can redeem your bonuses after you create an account. You can see it's only 3 pages. It's very simple to create an account. I'm going to show you guys a couple things that they're doing right now. First off, player prop bets, game prop bets. You can bet on this game, the money line. They put the spread at 6.5. You can even do player prop bets in terms of you can build your own props. This is build mode. You can go into over-under passing touchdowns, and you can bet on that, right? You can see only 1.5 for Jared Goff, so you can bet the over on that. And then, of course, you have to take a look at the futures bets as well. You can see the Lions are the favorites by far. I would say by far the favorites to win the NFC North. And I know a lot of people are going to want to jump on that one. But you can also bet who's going to win the NFC. Last undefeated team. Do you think, hey, look, Michael Banks, man, he's saying that he thinks we might be, undefeated going into the bye week. If you're with him on that, then I would look at that one. Last undefeated team. They are the leading betting platform, not only for sportsbook, but also for casino games. So you can get that fix here as well. As you can see, casino games, there is live betting as well. Do the live game betting, but you can also look at football, baseball. I know basketball's not really in season right now, but hockey, golf, tennis, soccer, martial arts, horse racing, what? Boxing? Okay, NASCAR, esports is in here. Like, yo, look at all these sports. Handball. As you guys can see, there's tons of bonuses that you can redeem, whether you're a new customer to BetUS or if you've used BetUS before. There's also re-up. You can see here as well. Re-up crypto bonus, re-up bonus. So a BetUS loyalty program, as you guys can see here, and there's tons of rewards that come with it, like free payouts, a toll-free number, bigger bonuses, welcome free play. With BetUS, you get great customer service, reliability, and also security, so you don't have to worry about those things as well. And if you go to their website, they can answer a ton of questions for you over here. They have the FAQ on there, so you can find any questions that you may have on their website. BetUS, top link in the description, or betus.com/DoseOfDion. It'll take you right there. You sign up, and let me know if you sign up. Screenshot it to me. Let me know. As I said, first person to do it, they're getting a helmet. I'm sending the helmet your way. So send that over, and it's going your way. If you're the first one to do it, you're going to get the helmet. First off, you talk about that explosiveness. You see it in the acceleration, the ability to get into a stem with real explosiveness. It really helps him. You'll see it on curl routes, hitches, double moves, right? The ability to break and then take off with really good explosiveness, kind of stride out of it, create a lot of separation on those double moves. And now he does it with a lot more than just being explosive. A lot of it is how disciplined he is at the top of the route, how crafty he is at the top of his routes, off the release and into the stem of his route. But discipline and body language was a huge note for me. You see it here against the Titans and kind of this cover 4 type of look where he sits down in the zone spot. The big thing that you notice is his eyes at the top of the route, also his body language. This is not the only example of this, but here in this cover 4 look, you have the outside corner. He's going to sell like a post right here. So that safety drops back, takes his eyes off, and then he sits it down into kind of that curl route, finding a spot in the zone. But it was really the eye discipline, not only for the cornerback working vertically, but then for that safety inside. You'll see him sell a double move on the outside here where he kind of like looks back and then he takes off upfield. The discipline at the top of his route was very noticeable, right? He's a little bit stiff. He doesn't corner extremely well, which we're going to talk about, but what he does do is he sells his routes out really well. Really good discipline, really good eye discipline. The first step, the way that he utilized his first step against press specifically, whether that wanting to hold a guy to his leverage or attack a player's leverage at the cornerback position, the first step always kind of leans into that with really good discipline. Now, I talked about him being a little stiff in a sense of, you'll see it on like speed out routes, so you'll see him trying to round routes, even dig routes don't look extremely clean. He does seem a little bit stiff trying to kind of corner, get off the release. You'll see it at the top of the route where there's a little bit of a pause in his routes. You also see him rise. You can clearly see him rise when he's kind of working into impending breaks. So it's very important that he stays very disciplined with his route running. And he's very aggressive. He aggressively sells his routes. And then you love what you love about the hands, because there wasn't a ton of opportunities to see it here for the most part, but pretty much everything that he got his hands on, he did catch. I mean, there was a couple like speed outs that were incomplete, but he didn't really have an opportunity to catch those. But he caught really well in contested situations, very aggressive in terms of ball tracking, attacking the ball at the highest point. It's a great part of his game because athletically speaking, he is gifted for that, and he showed a lot of success winning in that way. Strong hands outside of the frame, physical at the catch point. I mean, he even broke up an interception where the cornerback stayed on top of the route, but he broke it up. He's running this dig route, but he almost sells the curl route, and then he breaks inside. It doesn't look that clean. Again, he can be a little bit stiff, but the big thing there is that he sells it like it's going to be a curl, and the cornerback begins to drive, and then he kind of works over the middle of the field into a dig route, and that's when he really creates that separation. And that's the big thing for him, is that craftiness at the top of the route, sold by the aggressiveness that he utilizes. I think that's just a huge part of it. Also off the press, very ready hands, ready to compete, ready to fight back with his hands. Some of the limited agility and foot quickness, you'll see him get forced a little bit with some issues off the line of scrimmage. See that he would have limited maybe ways to win. Okay, he kind of had a way that he'd like to win off the press and really try to sell it, but I think you get limited a little bit there. There were times that he got completely like shut off. The most flexible or bendy athlete, but you are talking about like a truly explosive receiver with a ton of physicality in his game, and also toughness. I think you especially see it as a blocker, real toughness as a blocker. That can lead to special teams impact as well. So I really like a lot of things about this receiver. Obviously the testing and the highlight plays are great, but he's also very productive and consistent, efficient, and tough for the Bears in the preseason. So the Lions go get a big body receiver. He's 27 years old, but he was a former 5th round pick back in 2018 out of Northern Iowa. So he was also a draft pick. The next player we got to talk about here is an edge rusher. We're talking about another player that's been in the league for a little bit. He's 24 years old, and this is Raymond Johnson III. All right, he's rocking the number 56 here for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, I think what's interesting about this is I know during the offseason we had compared the Lions defensively, schematically, to the Cincinnati Bengals. And when you watch a player like Raymond Johnson, I think that's one of the first things that hits your eye is the versatility in the sense of playing a lot of 9 technique stand-up role. He was listed coming out of the draft at 6'2.5", 260. He looks maybe a little bit bigger than that, but I could kind of see him being in that ballpark. But playing that 9 technique stand-up role, but also rotating into a 6 technique, right? Playing head up with the tight end, all the way to playing a 3 technique, not just on pass downs, but also on run downs. And I think, yeah, that's probably not something that he's ideally going to be in that position consistently. I think you'd almost want to kick him inside rather than just consistently leaving him out there. But it did show off some of the flexibility within his game. And you think about our players, the Josh Paschals, the John Kaminsky's, kind of their body types, and that the Lions will occasionally ask them to sit inside as like a 3 technique, but usually they kind of rotate. You know, they'll stand up on the edge, they'll play a 9. Sometimes they'll get head up with the tight end, they'll play a 6. So they kind of move around to all those different alignments, just like Raymond Johnson does. So he fits into me perfectly in terms of when you look at the schematic aspect of it. But this was a player that really kind of, as you continue to watch him, you really liked him more and more and more. At first, you kind of watch him, you're like, all right, there's not a ton of twitch here. I think even when he was kicked in the inside, there wasn't a ton of twitch within his game. I'll continue to watch him, man. There's a lot of little things that you like. First off, you have to talk about his run defense, because there was a lot of consistency here. Whether that be on the backside of a run, you talk about discipline that has real straight line speed. Like when he's working in a straight line, I mean, he tested unofficially as a 4.78 40, 33-inch vertical, 7.213 cone drill, 19 bench press reps with 33 and a quarter inch arms. But I think you see real straight line speed. And I think for him, there's a lot of things that you like about the run. You like his vision as a run defender. This also could show up as a pass rusher as well, kind of just identifying where the quarterback is, adapting rush lanes. But really for him, it's the vision on the ball carrier, being able to track the football. That's a huge part of his game as a run defender. He does a really good job staying clean. You see it here working against the tight end, stays clean consistently against the run, front side and back side. But really on the front side, for a guy that doesn't move extremely well laterally, you will see his angles that look a little weird because they're not kind of a slide. It's more so just kind of running towards that direction. The angles on the front side are very consistent to play the run. Backside control, you like that as well. You'll see it on boot plays where he's very disciplined on the backside. Got a forceful punch on contact, and again, that really shows up on the front side when he's able to work against tight ends. Very forceful at the point of attack, usually kind of playing behind the line of scrimmage a little bit more in that sense, which you would expect. As a pass rusher, this did tend to grow on me a little bit. At first, I was like, I don't know if I love this. This definitely grew on me. I don't think he's great in this category. I think he's more so in the average category here as a pass rusher. But there was real flexibility, being able to win inside and outside, and he was not a one-trick pony. And I think a big reason for that is while he's not the most agile, you can see some little bit lack of dip and bend around the edge, but what he does really well is kind of like we talked about with Fountain as a receiver. He sells his pass rush really well. He has good awareness to how the offensive lineman is setting, and he can kind of play off that. You'll see outside wins with a little bit of a rip through when he gets the outside shoulder. You'll see inside counter pass rush moves. So there's a lot of versatility to the way that you've seen him win as a pass rusher, inside and outside. And I think a big part for him is the way that he sells it. I think he lacks some of that lateral agility. I think it's below average from what I've seen. What I do like as a pass rusher, though, kind of as a run defender as well, consistently ready hands. He also has good awareness in terms of, like, you'll see his pass rush kind of stall out. You understand with the players that if he doesn't kind of win on that initial go-to move, a lot of times his pass rush will essentially just stall out and it'll turn into nothing happening. So that's not great. But the flip side is you do like that when it happens, he consistently drops into, okay, look, I got to kind of contain here. Let me make sure I got my eyes on the quarterback. Let me get my hands in pass rush lanes. Like, things can really die out. Pass rush attempts can really die out if the first, kind of go-to setup did not work. But I do like how he shows some real awareness there. Good quarterback vision. You'll see it on stunt usage, the way that he can get from inside to outside with a plan for the offensive tackle, but also understanding where the quarterback is. So sometimes it doesn't always look pretty, but he's going to collapse on the pocket because he knows where the quarterback is, utilizing that lanes, get his arms in passing lane. Now, one thing I was a little bit disappointed in was the speed to power conversion. It wasn't ideal in terms of, like, he couldn't consistently, create a bull rush that would knock you back. He could give you kind of that initial jolt, and then it would essentially just die out. There wasn't as much speed to power conversion that would continuously drive an offensive lineman back. He would end up popping up. He would lose his leverage as a pass rusher. And this is where he grew on me, the flexibility. Here he is working on a left tackle. He's going to attempt a jump set. So watch him plant, ready hands, sticks on the shoulder, and gets pass rush. Or here when he kicks inside against the guard. You can see he's going to attack upfield, then inside, and then he just hops through the gap where the guard sets. A lot of those different types of wins by really setting up an offensive lineman. He came in with a plan and he knew how to set you up. Now, again, if that was stalled out, usually the pass rush would stall out after that. There wasn't a ton of, like, second effort pass rush wins other than just, dropping in and being aware. With that first step, while he's not extremely twitchy, what he is very good with his reaction time. He's very good reaction speed off the snap, very quick movement, and that helps him a ton, right? And you'll see it against the run when he's kicked inside as a 3-tech or a 4-eye. Some of that quickness off the snap to position himself early on the play, kind of play through that B gap, if you will. He positions himself very quickly into your chest, and that allows for kind of that second effort pass rush move because he can win immediately by getting in your chest, and then he can work off of that from being able to read what's happening in the backfield. And honestly, though, I think you also have to give him a lot of credit for the angles that he takes because, again, for a player like this who doesn't seem incredibly agile, I was so impressed when they went to a man blitz look and he got matched up with a running back as a stand-up edge. I mean, this is a big dude, and you watch him, you're like, that's not going to work. And he takes a great angle, runs this thing down, and makes an open field tackle. And honestly, you don't see him on the ground that often. For a guy that looks kind of heavy as a mover, there is some real body control there, and I think he takes very good awareness and angles to the football, and I think that all kind of plays into it. So Raymond Johnson III, look, the Lions needed some more edge depth. Okay, they definitely needed that in some way. Specifically, a guy with some size, they could absolutely utilize that. But also, I think the versatility side is something that they're going to like here as well. You know, a guy that has shown that ability to drop, even though it's not as natural as a James Houston or probably even a Julian Okwara, but he's shown that ability. But he also can kind of play to that big body type of game as well, like a Kaminsky or Pascal. So I think you get a little bit of flexibility, a little bit of best of both worlds in a sense there. Next player we have is a pure nose tackle, man. So the Lions added some depth. We kept Benito Jones around, which I thought was necessary. And the Lions added a player from the Dallas Cowboys, who was also a former draft pick, a round 6 pick back in 2021. But this year, obviously, Dallas went out and took Mozzie Smith in the end of the first round, so they kind of just drafted their new nose tackle there. And it's understandable. I haven't went back and watched Quentin Bohanna play really in the regular season. I only watched his preseason. But I know there's been some inconsistencies there in terms of the way that he's been graded, the statistics side of it. And I don't think he's much of a playmaker as a defender anyway. He is a little bit more of a space eater, a big dude, all right? Listed at 6'4", 327 pounds coming out of the draft, and it's probably a little bit lighter than actually what he can play at. Testing with 34-inch arms, which is excellent. Okay, you look at a guy like Broderick Martin, he kind of falls into, I think, similarly in a testing way and also a build presence as a Broderick Martin from a size, length type of standpoint, right? He's a little bit taller for what you usually look at with your nose tackle. The guys are like 6'2" and are more stout, right? It's a little bit taller, a little bit longer than that, so he kind of fits into the Broderick Martin category, but he fits right into that kind of play style stylistically, just like Broderick Martin does coming out of this year's draft. So the Lions truly just added a depth piece that's perfect for what the Lions are looking for there as a nose tackle that will play consistently between the A-gaps, whether that be a 2-eye, 1 technique, 0 technique. He'll consistently play between the A-gaps, and he has real 2-gap ability. And I think what's good is you saw odd front ability. He was able to play in even fronts, but he also has real 2-gap ability, and he would do that from different alignments. Usually from a 0 technique, we ask a guy like Broderick Martin to do that, but he did it from a couple of different alignments. Sometimes he plays the 2 technique, head up with a guard as well. So you saw real 2-gapping ability. I think his length was a big part of that. I think this is also very useful on the front side of zone rushing plays as well. Here's what I liked about him. I liked his really wide base on contact. This was not a guy that was consistently driven back, like really that much at all. I mean, he had a really nice wide base, strong frame at the point of attack, and for a guy that's that tall, sometimes you would expect that things would get a little bit off. Like, he was really consistent in that sense, and he had a real ability to reset himself. If he would go to a swim move and try to work himself through a gap, and then all of a sudden he's punched by a guard, he would maintain that wide base and not get driven back. So he utilized that really well, staying low off the line, but also maintaining that throughout the play, maintaining a really wide frame and being able to really hold and space eat that ground. That ability to gather and regain balance. Now, as a pass rusher, I don't think there's much here, to be honest with you. I don't think there's going to be much impact whatsoever as a pass rusher. My favorite part about him as a pass rusher was the activeness. Very active as a pass rusher, a lot of energy as a pass rusher, but there really wasn't much upside here. I think the biggest issue for him is he really struggled to get any kind of edge on an offensive lineman, specifically if he had a one-on-one with a guard. He couldn't get an edge seemingly on a guard one-on-one. He did do some stunt work, but really there wasn't much there. Now, he would get an occasional win or two with an accurate punch, fast reaction off the line of scrimmage, and then you might get like a little bit of a shed where he could kind of clog a passing lane. But to be able to get an edge and consistently work that edge and then close, that wasn't really something I even noticed in his game. So I don't think there's a ton of pass rush impact there. But what I did like is, speaking to that, kind of the first step, but more so for what we need, you talk about the accuracy. I think there's good accuracy as a puncher on the defensive line. Good accuracy with his hand placement tied with a wide base leads to some consistency at holding the ground there. I thought you would see him get caught behind on some zone runs, some hit and miss recognition on the backside of zone plays, like, okay, how do I want to play this? Where do I want to get my hands? And that's when his hands would become a little bit late. Front side or working on a center, I thought way more consistency. When you had him like a 3 technique and he was on the backside of a play, I thought there was much less consistency holding double teams. It was almost like he didn't really know always where to go with his hands. It was like almost there was a little bit of a hesitation, like, where do I need to punch? Where do I need to get with my hands to sit myself down? Also, very limited range in terms of playmaking, specifically off the backside. He'll get caught behind gaps consistently, so there's kind of limited range in that sense. But for him, it's really the fast reactions. It's the quick reactions to moving parts. It's when someone pulls and he immediately can find the center. I think Broderick did a good job of this as well, coming out of Western Kentucky. It's really good reaction time in that sense, specifically playing between the A gaps, playing that 1 technique, that kind of thing. quick hands, good base, and being able to stack and shed from there. And that's usually how you would get your playmaking wins if you were going to get playmaking wins. And you would see him anticipate a snap count, and you kind of see him like lean, like, okay, I'm getting into this lane. This is the gap I need to fill. This is where I want to get. He kind of anticipates that, so it helps him get like an early start. But then those ones where there's kind of like that little hesitation, pause, or delay in how he's playing it, that's where, again, especially as a pass rusher, it can get stalled out very early. This is a great fit for what the Lions want schematically, so it makes tons of sense that the Lions would add him in there, and it's just an excellent fit, really. Then finally, the Lions added a backup guard. But I say guard, though this guy's really played everywhere. At Temple in his final season, transferring to Temple, he played right tackle and left guard. Then you start to watch Michael Neese, who the Lions added as a guard from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You see him in his first game playing left guard. By the time you get to his second preseason game, he starts at left guard and then transitions into the right guard position. So now he's playing both guard spots. And then his third preseason game, he plays at center. So he's played really everywhere along the offensive line. And if you look at it, the Lions, I think, do need a guy that legitimately could compete and someone that maybe they could feel comfortable with to play really any interior offensive line position, but also center. I mean, that could be very beneficial. I know they have Glasgow. Jonah Jackson did it for us, so they don't maybe need that, but it is nice to have someone that can really play every interior offensive line position. This was a UDFA by the Denver Broncos back in 2022. He's a 25-year-old, so a little bit older on that side of things. Listed at 6'3", 303 pounds. What I noticed when he kicked the center is I thought his quickness was good enough as a run blocker, but it seemed to be a little bit hit and miss there and pass protection. But sometimes the way that he would set up would be a little bit delayed, or he'd get very steep on his pass protection sets, and guys could kind of get behind him a little bit. Didn't look as natural as it did at the guard position, but I guess that's understandable. It's something that does stand out. Good quickness. I mean, this was a guy that posted a 9.21 relative athletic score. He was signed kind of fitting into kind of that wide zone rushing attack for Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so they wanted more of that athletic offensive lineman, which we've seen the Lions do, kind of more of the athleticism on the interior offensive line. And of course, you look at a guy that we drafted, Colby Sorstel, who played right tackle to go to guard. That's an athletic offensive lineman that just moves really well. And this player's kind of falls into that category. Very seamless flow laterally. You'll see it as a polar. Very patient, but also very seamless. And when he's working into the second level, I think there's a really good pace there that he's able to work with. Now, hit and miss angles, but very good pace, I think, working into the second level. And that good quickness does help him a ton. Specifically, you're talking about zone positioning. He positions himself really well as a zone blocker. And I also like his pass protection awareness. Not to say that every pass protection set was great. I mean, it was pretty consistent, actually. I think he only gave up like 6 pressures in his final season at Temple. And I don't know if there was no blown blocks that I even noted when watching any of his snaps there with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I definitely could have missed a few. But also, I think really good awareness stands out. Like knowing what spot I got to get to. He can be utilized as a front side puller. He can be utilized as a backside pulling offensive lineman. So you can get him out on the move. He was utilized to do that in some pass protection sets. And my favorite part about that was the patience as a pulling offensive lineman, right? Not overrunning the play. Very patient, kind of broke down. Now, there definitely wasn't a lot of movement or drive power. You saw that at the point of attack. There wasn't a lot of drive within his game. Even on linebackers, you didn't see a ton of movement there, if any, and I thought that kind of hurt his ability to sustain, specifically at the second level, because there wasn't always seemingly a ton of force as he was working through his blocks. And I also thought hit and miss entry angles was a real part, especially as a zone blocker working into the second level. You'd maybe get him too steep, kind of just work off him. So I thought there was real hit and miss entry angles, specifically as a zone blocker, specifically when he played that center position. But I thought there was adequate quickness as a run blocker to allow him to play all interior offensive line positions. Pass pro didn't look as natural at center. It looked much more natural at the guard position, but it is something that he showed the flexibility to do. So the Lions could absolutely use that. One thing I will note about that, though, is when he transitioned to the center spot, there was a specific snap that he didn't snap the ball and everybody else moved. It seemed like he was kind of off there with the snap count, and it turned into a false start, I believe. I didn't hear the game, but the fact is he didn't snap the ball, and I actually think that's a different call, but that's what happened. So that is something to make note of when he played that position. So anyways, that is who the Lions added. I think they needed that kind of piece on their practice squad. Hopefully we don't have to go to that, but it is someone that seemingly was pretty good. I mean, he was pretty good at the guard position, and we really needed some more guard help. Like that was the struggle for us. I mean, it truly was. There's a reason everybody was moving around and shuffling the entire preseason. So this is a player that seemingly played well for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was pretty consistent, especially at the guard position, specifically just in one-on-one pass protection. Very stout initially at the point of attack was one of the biggest things things. It was an initial anchor that he was able to create. We talk about some of the play action sets, some of the jump setting sets, ability to carry a lot of stoutness at the initial punch, at the initial point of attack, kind of halt pass rush opportunities and just not allow anything to happen because it was kind of closed off immediately. That was a very big part of his success in pass protection. You tie that with the inside hand placement, and that would allow occasional success at the second level, but also success in pass protection as well, getting hands inside on his initial punch. Now, I did feel like his foot placement would get a little bit beyond punches, meaning that maybe his footwork wasn't always matched up with where he was trying to punch, whether that be as a run blocker, and he, again, going back to the angle side of things where he was kind of like trying to hit a target, but he wasn't really in a position footwork wise to stay under control. Same thing in pass protection as well. Sometimes his feet didn't always match up with some of the strikes that he was throwing, staying under himself. So, but I did love the awareness there. You love the awareness working into the second level, playing out his assignment before driving up to the second level. I really like the awareness there as a pass protector, knowing where he had to get to as an offensive line, but also using the drag hand really well. But yeah, seamless mover, fits in athletically. So the Lions, I think this is a really good addition for what they need. And those are really the four main players that I want to hit on. We did add David Blau, as I touched on, the quarterback. We saw him last year in the preseason to the practice squad. Adrian Martinez has not been brought back from what I've seen to this point. The Lions definitely didn't seem maybe extremely comfortable with Martinez. Now, I don't think he maybe got enough reps, but they didn't seem to be there. It felt like they were pretty comfortable with Nate Sudfeld. And then, of course, Nate Sudfeld because now he's out for the season with a torn ACL. So the Lions needed to add somebody, and David Blau could end up being their emergency quarterback, which I could see them having more comfortability with David Blau than they did with Martinez, just based on how they utilized him. Like, it wouldn't shock me if you told me that the Lions had more comfortability with David Blau than they did Martinez, and I think that speaks to the signing of David Blau. So either way, I think that could end up being our emergency quarterback. But with that being said, I want to remind you guys, betus.com/DoseOfDion, or use the top link in the description. They're not only our partner for today, but they're our partner for the football season, and it's a great partnership. So if you guys are going to be doing any of the betting side of things, use BetUS and use that top link in the description. That is the Lions practice squad update. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.